like everybody else's life went back to normal, and we sort of suffered in silence for a lot of years.
If you're comfortable, is sharing your story about Celeste and that period of your life?
Yeah, sure. I will say it probably took me 19 years to be able to come to this point where I can feel not brave, but just have the energy and the strength to talk about it. Because she'll be turning 24. She would have been in August this year, and it's back then, there really was not a lot going on in that space. So I think, we've stayed quiet for a long time purely because of that, because we just didn't know what we should talk about and what we shouldn't. So,
the stigma would have been a lot more. There would have been a lot more stigma around it than there is today. I'm imagining.
And even just like you have a funeral, and yes, your friends come, but they didn't totally get it. Like they didn't totally, like everybody else's life went back to normal, and we sort of suffered in silence for a lot of years. And people, because Tim and I are pretty positive people, and we were running a business at the time and all different sorts of things. It's people just think that you've gotten over it. So but Celeste was stillborn August the 9th in 2001, and I had a blood clotting issue, which caused slow growth and wasn't picked up till obviously quite late. Had a few different types of interventions that could possibly help, like steroid injections and things that they could do back then to try and hopefully help, and a lot of bed rest in hospital. But unfortunately, it wasn't to be. And we, I guess now looking back, I can say I learned a lot over the past 12 to 18 months going around the country, talking to other bereaved parents and their experiences. And the one thing that stood out to me, which we probably didn't speak about at the time, was the fact we didn't get to hold our daughter. So it was pretty much, the room was quiet. Our daughter was taken away. And, I have a lot of blank patches from that, because they dosed me up on drugs at the time. I don't know what they were, but I can't remember that far back. But so I had a lot of what I would call no emotion, because that was dulled down for me. I remember my husband crying, and that is pretty much my most vivid memory of him at my bedside crying. And I probably, because of being dulled down, really didn't quite understand what was going on at the time. Later on, a midwife brought Celeste back to our room, and she just sort of plonked her on the bed. And this is how I describe it, because this is how I visually can still see it, and this is how I felt. How it all happened was she just brought her along in this, I guess it's like a older version of a cuddle cot from back there. Basically plonked her on the bed, and that was it. And Tim and I had no idea what we should be doing. She said something about time, which obviously wasn't a long time. I think she was literally in our room for, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and then that was it. Time was up, and she whizzed her away. And that was our experience of our time with our daughter. No holding, no, we did have an older midwife. So, she was probably doing the old way of things maybe, but
I'm assuming they wouldn't have had a bereavement care team or anything like that.
No. And it was very, when I look back now, it's easy for me to say now, because I'm actually a person that doesn't like to talk bad of people. But, now am a lot braver, and, you know, I'm quite angry over a few things as well. I thought she was quite cold, actually. And whether that's her, how she emotionally deals with things as a midwife, who knows? But basically, we missed out on holding our child. We have no photos of us with our child. The hospital took a couple of photos and gave us. So the next time we got to see her was at the funeral home when we had an open casket. And we probably feel quite ripped off, actually, that we didn't get to experience some things that, you know, I hear that other people have. But don't get me wrong, I know that still in some hospitals, people still have that same awful experience that we had. So I think it's still, hospitals are all run differently and they all have different processes in place. So I think it's still a bit of a lottery of, you know, where you may have your child. So
yeah, I think that's a good point. Like, because I think it's important that that we talk about this, because there are so many different experiences that parents have gone through throughout that entire process, where they, like, I was talking to someone last week and they were talking about all these resources that they were given or that they were provided afterwards, and all they did was they knew what to ask and who to ask to get those. Whereas, like, when we lost Billy, we had no idea. I didn't even know what stillbirth was until it happened, and I didn't know that there was all these different things that you could ask them to bring you and to give you, and we could ask for this sort of extra stuff. And so I think it's important to talk about it, because then it lets other people know that if they are ever in those situations, that they have the ability to sort of advocate for that sort of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I feel like. You know, I had an interesting discussion with one of my son's friends, you know, and bearing in mind they're all 21, 22 years old and have been on this past 5-year journey with our family in raising funds and awareness. And one of them said to me last year that, you know, he looked around the room with his mates and thought, well, you know, possibly it could affect one of us going down the track. If you look at the statistics, he said, but, you know, we're educated now, like we actually understand. So we know that we can speak up and ask the questions. So, you know, to me, like, you know, tick, my job is done. I'm educating people to have a voice, to speak up